Okay, welcome gamers. My name is DasTactic and I am going to be interviewing today Mila from MuHa Games, the developers of Master of Magic. Welcome, Mila.
Hi.
Mila doesn't like talking, but anyway, we're going to be extracting a lot of information in this session. So anyway, we've got a lot to discuss, of course, and I guess the reason for this interview, which and thank you very much for your time with this. I'm really looking forward to being able to sort of pump as much information out of you as possible about the development process of Master of Magic. But we're going to be talking about the coming DLC of Master of Magic, plus a whole lot of other things around that. So
yeah, I'm really happy to be here. Happy to talk about it all.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, no, there's an awful lot to discuss actually, and so I've been trying to sort of rack my brains as to all the little questions that I've always had about the whole process. Let's go back to the start with Master of Magic, which is where you guys actually sort of released the game back in October, I think it was last year. Was it October? No, that was when it was the beta process, and it was December, I think, was the actual launch. And so it was great that you actually were able to build on the original game, like from 1994, and sort of remaster it. How do you see that as like a remake or a remaster? What's your take on that with what you've been able to do with it?
I think it probably falls actually somewhere in the middle, because in essence of the design of the game, it's a remaster, in that we tried to revamp what was already there rather than reimagine it. So I think in that sense that would be a remaster. But of course, it's not a remaster because there's none of the original source code or anything available. So we did have to rebuild it from the ground up. So it's a remake, but I think if it feels like a remaster to people that are playing it, then that is what we were aiming for, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. No, it's because one of the things that really struck me was just how well you've been able to capture the original game, the essence of the original game, but in a modern style. It's sort of, was that difficult, like to actually be able to just thread that needle so beautifully? Like it's just been like from a gamer's perspective. It must have been difficult to actually know, like for example, bringing in the hexes and things like this, which was different than the original. Was that an easy decision, or did you have to sort of really sort of hum and ha about all of those sorts of decisions?
Yeah, no, I think that's the thing with this remake, which is an experience that is very different for us from what we've done previously. So threading that thin line between staying true to the original and making any changes was definitely, every little decision was something we had to think about twice or more. I mean, technical things like the hex map, that was one of that in fact was a change that was agreed upon even at the very first meetings I think we had about doing the game with Slytherin. So so the hexes were in kind of before anything else was in.
Yeah.
But that was mostly a practical decision. It was something we've already worked with, and Robert, our programmer, he certainly
was it also
prefers working with hexes.
Was it also to do with the fat cross mechanic of the original Master of Magic game? Like it looked like the original game would have been much better with hexes anyway. So, did the original game itself push the hex design decision forward? It just seems that the fat cross.
See, I'm going to be very careful about saying that anything in the original game wasn't already perfect and we improved upon it. No, you're not gonna hear me say that. So
yeah.
But yeah, I think it does. I don't know. I think our team definitely thinks hexes work better for this type of game. That's probably the best I can say.
Yeah.
But I mean, to be honest, I'm not. It wasn't something that we decided upon from the original. That was one of the only decisions I think that was made kind of almost outside of the original.
Oh, okay, yeah. It's funny because from my perspective, like playing the game, I just always with the fat cross with the cities, like it was just didn't really sort of join in. And if people are sort of watching this and don't really know what we're talking about, it's the cities in the original actually were like a 3 wide by 5 sort of long sort of cross and it was sort of awkward to get them to fit, whereas the hexes just work beautifully. And so just one of my little sort of questions that I actually had was whether that was part of it, but obviously it's not, which is fine. Like I was actually, when I heard it was hexes, I actually was very, very happy with that change. And you had a lot of other little changes that you made along the way as well that like I didn't pick up a lot of them until like weeks or months after playing the game. Like even the decision to actually speed up the units a little bit on the map. Like that sort of decision, was that an easy decision to make, or because that in one sense?
Yeah. No. Well, I say the decision was easy, but sticking to it wasn't. I mean, actually, I probably can say that it was my fault that we changed it, because I used to play Master of Magic as a child. My brother had it, and I played it with him. And then when I sat back to play it again, once we got offered this opportunity, and I was like, oh my God, I can't take it. I can't take this one movement thing. I'm gonna die. So one of the first things we decided on, because I said it's terrible, was increasing the movement speed. Now, but at that point, we weren't. I mean, we only begun our kind of getting back into Master of Magic, or getting into Master of Magic for some of us, and playing it and reading about it and everything. So that seemed like a kind of easy enough decision to make. But then, of course, once we got into the beta tests and stuff, and suddenly we realized that, of course, it has implications for the game mechanic and everything. But so I think initially even we doubled, if I remember correctly, I think we initially doubled movement speed, and that was way too much, because it messed with a whole lot of spells and mechanics and stuff. So then we had to make it more custom for each type of unit, which of course fits perfectly with the whole design of Master of Magic, which is custom everything.
Yeah, because I didn't
that fitted in well.
Well, I didn't pick it. Like it took me a long time to actually pick. I was wondering, the pacing seems so much better than the original. Just with, and I know that you're not allowed to sort of say anything negative about the original, but I didn't actually realise that the movement had been doubled up, and I was thinking, why is it so much better? And it was that was just one of those little things that I think there's a lot of things that you've actually been able to just tweak. Like even the event systems that you've actually done, like you've done a lot of work on those as well. It's interesting to sort of see that you've actually got different options there as well, like whether you want to, one of the things I've got to actually compliment you on is that you've actually tried to allow players to actually go back and play the original style of game if they wanted to, and I guess the event system is one of those mechanics. Is that something that you guys were very, very conscious of as you were developing the game?
Yes, very much so. I think it. I think so. I don't know precise timing, but very quickly, once we started the development, and once we started reading the forums and kind of getting to know the game, we've decided that we need to kind of respect the fact that there are very hardcore fans out there that still like to play the game the way it is. So with every change that we've made, if we could fairly easily make it a settings thing where you can turn it on and off, we try to do it that way. I mean, obviously you can't do it with everything. Like the movement points, for example, you'd need to make because it's so custom made, you'd need to actually have a separate database for the units. So we couldn't do it with something like that. But with the events, creating a separate bundle that just had it the very same way the original did was easy enough to do. So we definitely wanted to do that. And with the events, I just guess that's kind of my thing. So as a gamer, I always like to have choices and ways to kind of resolve something rather than it just being, oh, this happened.
Yes, yeah,
So
no,
that
it's
was
it's interesting actually playing the game. Actually, one thing I was going to ask, because it's one thing that I actually find it a bit of a negative. Why is the with the events when they do come up? Why is the choices like you've got to go down to click on choices and then choose the choice? Why doesn't it just come up with the choices? Is that
Yeah, I think that's a trap that we kind of got ourselves into and then ran out of time to kind of fix it before kind of localization everything kicked in.
oh,
So the
okay?
way it happened is initially, so we didn't have that kind of event pack that was just the original events.
Yep,
So
yep,
then with the expanded events, we wanted it to appear really simple for people that would hate the change and not like there to be choices. We wanted the initial kind of accept to be still what it was in the original. So then accept would always just go, just accept the outcome of the given game event, sorry, and continue. And then the expansion would be for people that would want to kind of go into the adventure more and explore those options. Then later, of course, we did say, oh, why don't we have an actual separate module to do it? By
yep.
which time the whole system became a little bit redundant. But yeah, while it is not a terribly complicated thing to change, once you do all the localization, proofreading, and everything, these things kind of pile up. And with the other stuff that we're working on to improve the game, it's just kind of constantly on the back burner.
Right, yeah, because it's one of those things like I often don't see the word choices. And I just click on accept and then think, there was a choice there I could have made. And it's funny when I'm streaming the game, actually, people also say, oh, yeah, actually, we should be going straight to that choices screen. So anyway, that was, but it's like and the amount of actual new events that you guys have put in, and I guess that you're the main one that sort of has been working on that, I would imagine, with your role. So the new events, there's a lot of them, isn't there, that you've actually added into the game?
Yes, we've added, I can't remember the exact number now, but probably about 30 or 40 new events that we've added on. And they're still kept in the kind of same spirit of Master of Magic, so they're short,
Yeah, yeah.
short little things that happen rather than Thea-like events where you would have kind of chain quests and stuff. So I still try to keep within the spirit of Master of Magic. But yeah, I do. That's kind of
like,
yes, my wheelhouse. So I did want to add a little bit of a
yeah.
little bit more.
And with the I guess it must be difficult with the because it is a strategy game at its heart. Yet the events sort of do give it that role play aspect. Is that something that how do you thread that line as well? Like that's another balancing act, I guess, as a developer. That it must be difficult to sort of know exactly when to sort of switch it because the game plays very much like a strategy game. Like when you're actually playing it, the pacing is really, really fast, which I'm really happy with because it really differentiates it from so many other games. And the events are fairly intricate, but not too involved, if that makes sense. Was that a difficult road to tread as a developer?
Well, I think it was just different from what we've done before. So I don't know if. Well, I guess it was difficult in a sense that I'm used to having the space to make really complex quests and stuff, whereas here it had to be short and direct because, as you said, so I'm glad that's how it feels to you because that's exactly what I was aiming at. So not to disturb the pure strategy feeling of the game. So the events are just there to give a little bit more, I guess, flavor to the world.
Yeah.
And just a bit of a, just to show that the world is alive apart from you just going around and killing things with magic.
Well, it's like
So yeah, it's as with everything else in design, you have to be aware of what the target audience is and what the game should feel like.
no, it's great because I mean some games can go overboard if you know what I mean, like with that role play aspect, and I guess with a game that is sort of like at its core a strategy game, I just again I think that's you've balanced so many things in the development of Master of Magic. incredibly. Like it's one of those real pleasures to play as a gamer, and so it's those sorts of things always, always wonder, because the Thea games that you guys developed as well, they're much more sort of story driven than, for example, Master of Magic, and so it's an interesting aspect as well.
Yes.
Yeah, one of the other things I was going to actually ask, like you mentioned there before about the fans, and you've sort of been trying to sort of like keep the fans happy. Of course, you've got old fans that have. I noticed that when I stream, I've got a lot of people who played the original game back from the 1990s. A lot of them see that game through rose-coloured glasses, and they haven't played the game in recent times. And then you've got the new fans that are coming into the game fresh, and that must have been very hard for you to know who to sort of I guess listen to with the aspect with the development.
Yes, of course. And I mean, I think that's the thing about any remake or adaptation, but remakes, especially when it's the same medium. But it's. I would say that's probably the hardest part of it too, because you want to stay true to the core base, but of course you need to attract new players. In order to survive.
You said that.
But I think we did. I think the way we've made the game, the decision, the kind of final decision was to stick to the original. I mean, we do get a lot of complaints about kind of some of the modern mechanics possibly missing from the games and things like that. And I think they're all fair criticism, but it doesn't come from our kind of unwillingness to add those things, or laziness, or something like that. It does come from the fact that we really wanted to recreate Master of Magic as it was, and being such a small team, once you focus on that, it might seem easy to then kind of add additional features that are kind of modern and present in other strategy games. But yeah, it's the day only has 24 hours.
Yeah.
And there's only 6 of us.
No, it's. I mean, you mentioned there that all games have got to sort of answer to their fan, but I actually think that you've got the like with games like Master of Magic, which are considered classics. So many games are inspired by Master of Magic. It's not the same as other games. It's actually the fan base is probably much more volatile in the sense that you've got to be careful. I know that even when I'm streaming the game, like I get so many people come in who won't look at any game because it's not the original, and then it's and most of them are very pleasantly surprised with what you guys have actually been able to do with the game, which is great, because it really does feel like the original game not in the way it plays, but in the actual flavour of the game. And so again, I just think that it must have been such a hard road again, just to try to sort of thread that, because you've also got the fans that don't just play Master of Magic, but play the Caster of Magic mod, for example, which has been around for 20 odd years. That would be that. Again, when I'm streaming, I come across the purists who enjoy the original game, and then you've got the the people who think of Master of Magic as Caster of Magic and are used to all of the additions that came in with that particular mod. Was there any pressure at when you were actually developing the game to actually then go and try to go in that direction, like and extend the game further, or was it really just the original?
I think very quickly we realized it's World War III and the Master of Magic versus Caster of Magic community, and we were not touching that. So we were hired to do Master of Magic, and so we decided to do Master of Magic. I mean, Seravi was kind enough to test the game for us and give us his feedback.
Actually, for people who don't understand, Seravi is the modder who made the Caster of Magic mod. Yep.
Yes, and he was really his feedback kind of solidified that we're going in the right direction, because he said, I don't know if I'll say the percentages correct, but he said something like, we did 80% original, maybe 5 or 10% caster and rest kind of new. And I was like, wow, that's exactly what we were trying to do.
Yeah, that's great.
So that's quite awesome to hear that from someone like Seraphine. So yeah, of course. So of course we did and now I can't remember things like starting with the settler. I think that's a caster of magic thing. And there's various things that we liked a lot from caster of magic, but yeah, because we realized very quickly that the community is so very divided.
Yes, it really is, isn't it? It's
we
really
were just
split.
like, nah.
And it's funny when people who, and I know from when I stream the game, they come in thinking caster of magic is master of magic, and so they've got a whole different paradigm, and then you've got other people that are the opposite, and that must be, again, that must have been quite difficult. And I guess that's a good way for us to segue into the actual DLC. I mean, it's taken a little while for us to get to the DLC, but you've got the like, I guess, and we're talking, of course, about through the mirror, which is then sort of looking at sort of expanding a little bit of the mirror plane. And actually, again, for people who are listening to this and don't know what this is a free DLC, or an FLC, I guess you could call it, for the game. So
yeah.
So
I should say it's a free content update.
Yeah.
We should call it that.
And so it really does focus on the mirror plane. There's a lot in there with that one as well. And so one question I sort of had was, like, if you are, like, it seems to me, as I'll sort of skip to, I guess, the end of this discussion in my mind, which is does this point the direction of where you can take Master of Magic? Is this sort of like just a bit of a teaser to say this is just the start of where it can be expanded into?
In some ways, I think so. Yes, I think it's a kind of we haven't stopped yet type of thing. I can't say too much about our future plans because you know how it is. We need to kind of but we don't want to make promises that then we can't deliver and so on and so forth. But yes, I think that's I think also with the DLC, especially for me personally as the narrative designer, it's DLCs in terms of content, because the two separate things. So the content update versus updates that give us actual kind of UI changes or quality of life improvements. They're kind of two separate things. But in terms of the content update itself, for me, that was a chance to kind of finally not have to stick strictly to the design doc that is Master of Magic, and maybe add a little bit more of ourselves into it, which for me personally was certainly a very exciting thing to do.
Again, if people are watching this and don't really understand the context, let's maybe just go through and summarise what it actually does bring. Did you want to just go through what the DLC actually does add to the game? And then I'd love to explore more about what you guys have been able to do with that, and what you're interested in with what you've done.
Yeah, sure. So basically we're adding 4 new wizards, and the focus is through the mirror, because so far the mirror plane only had Thra in it as its kind of lone wizard, as it were. So we felt that perhaps spicing it up and giving him some company in the mirror was the right way to go. So we add 4 new wizards. We add a whole new race, who are the goblins, a couple of new heroes, some new skills, and that include kind of, newish mechanics, as in like summoner kind of classes, where you only had the demon lord, I think he's called a demon lord, that summons demons in the original. So now we'll have a couple of more units that can do that with new and exciting summons. So that's basically the core of the content. So new traits also, of course, new wizard traits. So it's all about kind of using the existing mechanics and flavors, but adding a bit more of our own story and lore and characters into it.
And so with the goblins, it's an interesting choice. I've had a lot of fun playing with them, I've got to say, just over the last week. So I've sort of got like the preview build of it, and it's they're going to challenge players, aren't they? Like, they're not an easy faction to actually play initially. You've got to really think about them. And you mentioned about trying to sort of how you guys were sort of trying to introduce your own interests into it. So could you explain a little bit more about why the goblins? And I guess in a very, very brief summary, they're sort of, would it be fair to say that initially they're the weakest of all of the factions, including the halflings, or do you sort of see them as in terms of their combat, but their production is incredibly strong?
Yeah. It's funny you should say that, because we had a lot of iterations of the goblins and a lot of beta testing with some of the core fans, and they were kind of seen as the most OP race.
Oh, really?
So we had to nerf them quite a bit, because people were saying we've gone crazy with them. So I think this is the thing about Master of Magic, you see. I think people that play the game really well have found combinations that we didn't think about either, that suddenly make the goblins like, crazy strong. So it's like the boar riders being so quick to produce and that sort of thing. But yeah, let me start from the beginning, because I started at the end. But so why the goblins? So first of all, the goblins, because to me it seemed like a kind of glaring omission from the kind of kitchen sink fantasy that is Master of Magic. I think we have everything else that you could think of when you think fantasy, and goblins were not there. So I think it's for me, it was as simple as that. It was like, why don't we have goblins?
Yeah.
And I think goblins are also pretty cool. So yes, I think that was the initial thought. Again, with this focus, once I started thinking about how thematically what to do in the update, again, goblins seem to work well with the mirror races, having that kind of darker side to them. So that was another reason why goblins worked well. And yeah, as far as them being, I think, more difficult, it's actually when you already have 14 races in your game, it's kind of tough to try and find ways in which the new one is different. So yeah, they are, I think, more challenging when you start. But as I said, I think with certain kind of magic combinations, they can become very powerful. And the production bonus was there to kind of really give them some extra boost.
I've sort of
because
played
the goblins to me are like something, they are, the goblins that I've created, that they are kind of a productive bunch.
Yeah,
there's a lot of them.
I'm finding the game is. I've sort of played the game now up into like close to 200 turns, and it's the production powerhouse they become by that stage is so strong, and of course they then sort of the combination, as you say, like with the. We've got the ball riders, who probably are the strongest of the early sort of units. Because they have a good, really good, interesting combination of like the first strike. They've got the strong movement, and then they've got I forget what it's called, like where you can actually go through difficult terrain, like whether it be tundra or mud.
Earthwalker, yes, and they've got the stun skill, which is like if it's successful, it kind of takes away the attack of the enemy and stuff, which all the boars have it now.
It's because it's and so when I was trying to sort of figure out how the best way to play them, are they sort of designed to be played with that the mud spell? Is that sort of like what was the thought process, like to try to sort of like with the nature aspect of them, and then the mud spell with those guys that can then sort of charge through the mud and almost sort of come in, do a hit, and then bounce back out again? Is that?
You see, I'm going to say now, I'm not sure they do charge through mud, because they move through swamps, but I'm not sure it works on mud.
I didn't actually try.
That would have been a really good thought. That I now have to try it and see if we can make that happen, because I like the sound of it.
I think it does, because it said that it actually, like in the description, with the way that the movement worked, that they did actually they could move through mud or through that sort of difficult terrain.
That was that. See, that was that has been corrected to swamps, because someone has pointed out to me that it was mud, and I was like, I think it's supposed to be swamps, but Now that you've said it all, I'm like,
Because my assumption was
that could be an interesting to do with them. Yes.
yeah, it's
So
sort of
maybe a tweak coming in the future.
I didn't actually try it, but it was when I was sort of looking at it, I was thinking, oh, that would be the way to play it. You know, like if you could get the mud spell, and so with my initial picks and things, that was always going to be one of the ones I wanted to actually make sure that I actually had. But I didn't actually ever get to test it. But I thought that was they looked very, very cool, and also like with the less armor than anyone else as well. Like that's why I sort of thought the hit and run aspect of the goblins, the high production means that you can sort of just keep on tuning out different units and things like that. And then
Yes.
I guess by the time you sort of then get up to the one thing I've really enjoyed is the druids, like the small druid units. They've been so much fun to play unless they come up against magical ranged attacks. So they're very nuanced. With you can't really send them in against dark elves or anything like that, which is interesting as well. So it's almost like you've got to have like two stacks, one for depending on who you're going. And I found that really, really good fun to play as well. So I've probably had as much fun with the goblins as any other faction that I've played in the game. It's really been interesting because they really do make you think about what you're doing, and I love those sorts of aspects about it. To be honest, just from a gaming perspective, it's been a lot of fun, and it's actually it's just interesting to get your perspective as well as to sort of why you chose them, because the other thing with them not being able to use adamantine weapons or mithril weapons as well also keeps them sort of lowish, where they then rely on other factions on the mirror plane to then sort of be able to work effectively. It just feels good. It's really got a very nice feel about it, and so I guess with their with the way that they are sort of working as well, like it seems like the friendliest races that work with them are the trolls, which also don't have adamantine or mithril weapons, and the beastmen. Is that sort of like, again, was that a thought process of trying to sort of like get beastmen units to sort of work in with them?
Well, that was more of a law choice, because I was asked by Shell, who does the technical design of the race, how I wanted to go, and goblins are kind of nature focused creatures in Master of Magic, so trolls also being very, very close to nature, and beastmen again. So the decisions about which races they are friendly with or not are actually law based.
Yeah.
So I kind of we went in that direction because
Because you can sort of
because I'm his boss, so I made him do it.
It's funny because playing the game, like I'm finding that whenever I see adamantine, I'm thinking, okay, I've got to get my beastmen cities into there, and then the goblins can have everything else just so they can get their money. And it's incredible the amount of money that the goblins end up creating over the course of the game. They've got very, very strong growth as well. So I guess actually, we've spoken about the race, but what about the four different wizards? Like they're also quite interesting choices as well. Like you've got the other, like the goblin druid, who has got incredibly powerful summoning spells at the start as well. Which, again, if you use her with the goblins, it mitigates the early weakness of the goblins, doesn't it? Really?
Yeah. I think it does. And again, with the wizards, it's when you already have so many, the challenge is how do you make the next one interesting. So I think going forwards, that's going to be fun with every time. But so that was the thing. So we and I think with adding a new race, so and I know I came up with the name. It's based on a actual Welsh druid, but I cannot pronounce her name. So I shall call her the Goblin Druid.
Yeah,
but yeah, she seemed like the Chalga. Let's call her that. Serves me right for choosing Welsh names. I think because we were doing the Goblin race, I think for me it feels very natural to have a representative that race in the Wizards. That's what it initially came from, and then and them being kind of Beastmasters and Druids, it went in that direction. And the Nature Summoner trait, yes, we had a lot of going forwards and backwards with the design of it, because we already have the what was it, the Conjurer trait, and we have the Channel trait. So traits that already kind of lower upkeep costs or lower costs of summoning creatures and stuff. So again, it's that kind of balancing act. And then so we decided to actually give any Nature Summoner those powerful. Initially, we actually had all of the nature summons available, but that was decided that was definitely too strong. So so
I'm surprised it's only 1 point. I would have thought, it's so powerful. Like it should be, like, from my perspective, I think it should be 2 points, not 1 point, because it really does. It really, like, to get those basilisks so early in the game is incredibly strong. It's it's fun to play, but it's a really, really good combination. And another question too. We got the 4 different wizards in there. You've also got like a dwarvish wizard as well, like Bianca.
Bianca, yeah.
And there's been a lot of discussion when I've been live streaming, because I did actually a stream with Bianca as well, and with the dwarvish beards, we couldn't figure out where that has come from with laws, with the female beards on the dwarves, and there was a lot of argument.
Tolkien. It comes from Tolkien. It's an inside joke. So it could be Tolkien having a laugh. It could be Gimli joking and pulling the leg of I think it was Legolas that he spoke to, but I can't remember precisely. But it was Gimli that initially said that dwarven. Well, I think the quote is something like, "Dwarven women are unrecognizable to the human eye or ear, thus suggesting they have beards and sound like men too." And that was something. Actually, dwarven women are not present in Tolkien's lore very much.
No.
So it's not it's obviously it's not a 100% confirmed thing. So it could have been a Gimli joke. However, it's very much as fantasy stable. And then of course Terry Pratchett carried it forwards in his work.
All this came up in the discussions.
And then of course Peter Jackson continued it in his adaptations. So I would just like to say that it has nothing to do with politics.
No.
It was a die-hard Lord of the Rings fan, die-hard Tolkien fan, and in fact, if that's probably something a little fun story. So in fact, I did Bianca because I got annoyed at the Rings of Power not having bearded women. So that was kind of my, I was like, this is how you do it.
No, it's sort of interesting. It's funny because it was one of those things where games either go one way or the other with it, and there was like a lot of discussion when I was live streaming just in the chat about where it all came from. People arguing that it was not part of the original books but part of the film, and other people were saying Christopher Tolkien put it in his material. No,
it's actually in the books. It's Gimli says it.
There we go. Yeah, people had got it down to Terry Pratchett had also included it in his material, and Gimli had mentioned it, but then it was like there was argument whether it was actually in the books or in the movie. Probably in both.
It is. It is in the books too. But so for me it was just that. So I never knew it was going to cause this much of an uproar. I'm a bit naive like that.
Oh, it's not an uproar. It's just people just like, it's one of those things. Oh, where does that come from? Like what's because other games like Dwarf Fortress, for example, I think it used to describe them with beards, but then it didn't put them in the latest version of Dwarf Fortress that came out. So they kept the beards off visually, but it used to be part of. I think that was what it used to have. I think they used to actually have the beards in the descriptions back in the day. So so it's been funny sort of watching what's happened over different games with dwarves.
Yes.
And
I don't have beards in our dwarves down here, but that was largely because of how we did Tier 1 and how limited our finances were. So we had to have it as generic as possible to start with, just because of how, we had to go for the simplest kind of representation first before we knew how it's all going to turn up. So sadly, my Thea dwarves, female dwarves, don't have beards. So now this was an opportunity for me to fix it.
Actually, talking about the Thea games, I mean, because the lore in the Thea games was incredibly rich. And I guess that this is something that, like, I remember sort of like what struck me about it was just how it seemed so almost darker than what you sort of had, what I guess traditional sort of Western mythology. It's very much like, it feels like the world of The Witcher. Is that anything that you guys sort of, with the Thea games, did you actually sort of consciously go that way, or is it?
Yeah, of course. Yes. I mean, it's pretty much at the time that I was kind of recruited, let's say, to MuHa. I was writing a thesis on pretty much Lord of the Rings and Sapkowski. So those were my two areas of interest, and that's pretty much where Thea came from. I mean, I think we go into kind of Slavic mythology more and gods and stuff, which Sapkowski doesn't do. But certainly that was the key influence, that kind of high fantasy, but mixed with the kind of very dark Slavic folklore and mythology. Yeah.
It really enriches the experience, doesn't it, with those sorts of games? And is that something that you want to sort of try to get more into, games like Master of Magic in the future, or you'd probably not have to talk about that?
I'm not. We shall see. I mean, it's certainly more Easter eggs from the can be expected, but whether it will go any further than that, we shall see.
But I mean, even if it's, it's not just even from Thea, but from that whole, as you say, from the Slavic mythology. It's got,
of course.
Yeah, it's really quite different than the Western mythology, which. And it's got a lot of richness to it as well. Like, I've loved reading the Witcher books, for example, and it just feels, I don't know, it feels good. Somebody who does like sort of reading mythology and or reading those sorts of fantasy type books.
I think it's a bit also, it's a bit different. It's a bit, it's not always the same as we're so used to in fantasy. So yeah, it's certainly something I will want to include, but we shall see whether it happens or not.
Yeah, and I guess with you being like the narrative designer for these games, it's must be very tempting to sort of to have these sorts of, I guess, inspirations to sort of add into the game in different ways. But again, I guess you can't really talk about what's coming. So.
Yes.
Not that I know anything at all. So, but I was interested in like how the Thea games and the way it sort of then worked in with the Master of Magic as well. Like, just where all those mythological inspirations sort of are coming from, and whether those sort of Slavic, really rich sort of Slavic mythology is will eventually sort of, I guess, make its way into Master of Magic. I mean, personally, I think it'd be great.
Yeah, no, I can't say. I can't.
No,
maybe.
That's okay.
maybe is all I can say.
Maybe if we could sort of take a bit of a step back and just talk a little bit about the journey to get to where you guys were sort of developing Master of Magic. And it's sort of because the whole Master of Magic franchise had quite a strange history, didn't it, really, right from the very, very start. And then, like, when it was announced that Slytherin had actually acquired the rights to Master of Magic, it was that was very surprising. And then with so, I guess the question would be sort of like, did Slytherin sort of approach you guys because of the Thea games? Was that sort of like what they thought, this is the style that we're looking for?
I believe so. Yes, that's what pretty much what they said to us, that they've been looking for a studio that can do the game, and they've seen our work, and yeah, pretty much you've hit the
Yeah.
the nail on the head. Yes, that's what we were told when we were approached, and yeah, it was the right time because we just finished with Tier 2, and we were about to kind of embark on a new project. And yeah, it's Master of Magic. I think not all of us have played it because in Poland it actually wasn't as big at the time when we were gaming. So yeah, some of us haven't played it as gamers, but some of us have. So yeah, but we've all heard about it, from a strategy game point of view. So that was certainly an exciting thing, and working with Slytherin as well, as you know, they also specialize in those sort of games. So yeah, it just seemed like the right time to do it.
Well, when it was announced that you guys were actually going to be the developers of it, it just seemed like that was the perfect. You were the perfect sort of company to take on that sort of project based on what you've done in the past and sort of leading forward. So it was. I thought that was a very inspired choice of Slytherin to actually then choose MuHa Games to do the game. I really can't think of any other studio that would have actually fit the mold, as perfectly. It's So anyway, I was very happy when I sort of saw that you guys were actually in there.
I think there aren't. I think I don't know whether we're like the only sort of good studio to do it, but I certainly think we're one of the few that are stubborn enough to have done it as faithfully as we have. I don't think there are many out there that would have been mad enough to do this.
Yeah. I've asked Slytherin many times if they could ever tell me how they got the rights, but no one ever will. I guess I don't know if you know the you not let us talk about it either.
It's not even that I'm not allowed to talk about it. I don't know either.
Because there were so many games that thought they had the rights, or that they could actually just use the rights because things had expired. But they were very, very protective. There was a lot of games that were developed and then had to change because I think it was Atari at the time actually had the rights to it, and they were very, very protective of the rights, even though they weren't doing anything with it until they sort of then gave it across to Slytherin. But so there's some interesting sort of approaches there, and I guess one of the games that actually is very heavily inspired by Master of Magic, and that's with its own series, is the Age of Wonders series, which they've got a big game coming out in a couple of months' time, and I guess I get a lot of questions as to where Master of Magic sits in like next to something like Age of Wonders. Do you have your own perspective on that?
Well, I think Age of Wonders is more of a kind of AAA game, so it's like I find it flattering to be compared to it, but it's so I think it's great to be kind of put alongside such games. But I think we have our own little space where Master of Magic kind of works and is good, and it's good at what it does as a faithful recreation of the original. I would imagine Age of Wonders will have more flashy stuff, which will likely be more attractive to maybe the more I don't know. I don't know the word that I'm looking for. No, maybe not a casual, but yeah, just people that that appreciate kind of flashy graphics and things on top of I'm sure what will be a great game, which is obviously not in our kind of scope, not something that we can reach. So it's definitely a stressful game for us because it's like it is so close. It is the kind of it's the
It seems from my perspective like there's someone.
It's the fancy version of Master of Magic.
Because I mean, Age of Wonders was actually heavily inspired by Master of Magic, like when they first started developing it. But it seems that, like from my perspective, the Master of Magic, what you've actually been able to create with that is so much easier to just step into, if you know what I mean. Like it's a game with a lot of complexity as you get into it, but the game itself has got like a faster pace overall. I love the Age of Wonders series as well, but they're much more sort of tactical, I guess. In like their battles take an hour to play out at times, whereas the Master of Magic battles take minutes. So I find that they do sort of scratch different itches, if you know what I mean. From my perspective, they're actually because I do get asked that a lot. Are they the same sort of game? And they're not the same sort of game at all, are they? Really, in the whole sort of.
They have the flavor. They have the same flavor of kind of magic strategy. So I can see how it. But you're right. They are, when you go into it, they're also quite different.
Yeah, I've again, when I'm sort of streaming these sorts of games, I often find that people actually will buy games like Age of Wonders, but then not actually play them because of the complexity. Whereas games like Master of Magic, I sort of think that's actually for somebody who wants to just play a fantasy game, it really is an easy game to get started with. Even though there's complexity as you sort of start to go through the turns, it's sort of. I don't know.
I can just see some people on Discord now shouting at you and shaking their fists when you say such things.
Oh no, it's because as I say, I love both the games, and I really do love Age of Wonders.
No, I know what you mean, and I'm glad that there is also a feeling out, because it means we did want the entry level to be not scary. Not scary difficult. I think that's very important to be able to. So it's what's the saying? Easy to learn, difficult to master. I think that's definitely for me. That's Master of Magic. It is easy to go in and have a game, but mastering it is. I mean, I've been at it for 3 years now, and it's the tip of the iceberg for me when I play. It's like I look at people playing it and the things they notice again when we did the new race and stuff, that the combinations that they come up with, and we're all like, oh yes, that makes it really
it's funny.
So it's no,
because I do,
and that's actually really strange for a game developer. Like for us, this is a strange feeling, because with Thea, we obviously, when you design the mechanic from the start to the end, you understand it perfectly because you made it. But here, because we've redesigned, we've tried to recreate something that's already existing, we're still learning. It's crazy.
Oh, it's funny. I get people who have played the game for like 25 years or whatever, and so they come in with all of these really intricate little ways of doing things. I know exactly what you're talking about, and it's sort of one of these things where it's like the people who have mastered the game. It's very interesting to sort of hear them actually communicate about what they do, and it's, as you say, it can be played so many different ways, and it is one of those games that I think it's for the more casual type player. It's actually a game that the casual player can get into as well, with the different sort of settings that you've got there as well. Like it's just for me, it's one of these games. If I had to recommend a game like a fantasy game to a player who who didn't want to invest a lot of time in actually learning a game, but still wanted to have a challenging game that would then sort of grow with them over years and years, then Master of Magic sort of ticks all those boxes. So it's it's an incredibly good little game. So congratulations on what you and the team have actually sort of done with the game. It's just amazingly good.
So. Oh, thank you. It's really, really nice to hear.
Well, I guess we should wrap it up there, Mila. So that's fantastic. Thank you so much for your time. It's been really interesting to actually then to go and have this deeper dive into the behind the scenes with the development of Master of Magic.
No, it's great talking to you. I hope it was interesting. Yes, and yeah.
Oh,
whenever you need to talk again, let me know.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic.
Maybe with the next update.
Yes, absolutely. I can't wait, actually. I mean, I guess, again, talking about the DLC, for me, the thing that's so exciting about the whole process, sorry, I'll just go back to one of these other little things that again, as a gamer, that I've... I know that you had a brief to answer initially with the initial... Master of Magic had to be close to the original, but this DLC that's coming out, for me, just shows just the different directions, whether it be through modding or through the development that you guys are going to then be doing. It can really go in so many different directions from this point in time. You've really established a baseline with the original, like with remastering the original. It's funny because even when it was actually first announced that it was going to be Master of Magic and not Master of Magic 2, I sort of thought, oh, that's great, because it does establish that baseline. And it does mean that you have to constrain to the original game a lot, but from there you can go anywhere. And this DLC, I think, really does point that way. So
Great.
Yeah.
That's kind of what we're aiming at. So
yeah,
that's good.
no, it really feels that way. It's really, really interesting.
And we didn't talk about the modding community much, but yeah, I think
No.
this is something that we also want to improve upon, and give as many tools as we're able to, because I think that's Master Magic has a very strong modding community, and I hope we can give them enough tools, just to do wonderful things with it. So I'm excited to see, our own content, and it's actually stressful because it's like people come up with such wonderful things, and then you're making your own DLCs and stuff, and you're like, oh gosh, maybe they've done a better job.
Oh no, it's actually with the modding as well. Like I've played around a little bit with it just to sort of see, and it's actually, like, again, from a modding perspective, it's actually quite an easy game to build into, isn't it? With what you've actually got established, like it's you've got, is it the same tools that you use, like that you've actually got in the game there with the editors and things? Is that what you're using for the content, or is yours a little bit sort of more advanced than that?
Yeah, the modders don't have access to the full kind of, and now it gets to the full thing,
Okay.
the technical thing. I don't know. So I know the modders don't have access to the full thing,
But they do have strong access, don't they?
Yeah, like a lot of the databases and a lot of scripts that are open and then can be changed. So things like, adding new races, skills, magic, wizards, all of that is available. There are some limitations still from, that can't be done for modding, but we are also hopefully going to work on that and open up more areas. But those I've just mentioned, those that's already a lot of things that you can change in the game, and you can change like difficulty settings and all sorts of things. So already you can make the game. I know there's mods already that change the economy and add new heroes, races and things. And
I was having a look yesterday, actually.
Yeah, and I mean the event editor, I think that's the only thing that's exactly the same as what I would use when making the event. So that's also been made available. But yeah, we're going to work on that Steam Workshop that we promised ages ago.
Yeah, actually, I was going to ask about that. So Steam Workshop, is that on the cards?
It's on the list.
Okay, on the to-do list. Look, thank you so much for your time. It's been great.
Thank you.
This has been awesome.